button. First off, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here tonight. My name is Sage Ober, and I work as the associate director for new student and transition programs at the University of Richmond. I work with different departments and schools around campus to get the new Spider Summer Series organized, and I'm again excited to have you here tonight. We are happy and glad to have Dr. John Vaughan, who's the director of pre-health education, with us tonight to give you a little more information about pre-health studies. So what will happen is there will be a presentation, and then at the end, we will have time for any questions and answers. If you look at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little button that says Q&A, and feel free to type any questions in there, and we'll get them answered after the presentation's over. So with that said, I'm going to pass it over.
Thanks for the introduction, Sage. Good evening, everyone, and congratulations to those of you who will be starting out at Richmond in the fall. I know this is a busy and exciting time for you as you're preparing to start your college adventure. My name is Dr. John Vaughan. I am a member of the biology department at Richmond and like to welcome you to this session on pre-health studies. Just so you know, there will be a more formal orientation meeting that happens for new students near the start of the fall semester. And at that meeting, I will cover the program's resources in depth. My goal for this evening is simply to share some very basic information on the program, as well as some important considerations as you're preparing to register for fall classes. Since we are in the webinar format this evening, I cannot see or hear you, so please submit any questions you have along the way using the Q&A box that Sage mentioned earlier, and I will do my best to watch for your questions. I think she's going to help with that as well. So I'm going to do a screen share with you. Just had a couple slides I wanted to present. So let's see, Sage, if you can make sure that the screen share is working, because I'm getting a message that it's disabled.
All right, let's see over here. Did that work by chance?
You could, if you could make me a co-host.
That's what I'm gonna do. Let's see if that
might solve it.
I thought you already were for some reason, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
But hopefully that fixes it.
Okay, I think that's going to fix it for us.
Perfect.
All right, so hopefully you can see this first slide up here. So the first thing I wanted to do really is just to simply clarify what pre-health studies is and what pre-health studies is not, because sometimes this is a point of confusion for new students. So essentially, pre-health studies is going to be a resource for all pre-health students at Richmond. And I'm using the term pre-health to cover any kind of health profession career, be it medicine, dentistry, nursing, physical therapy, physician assistant, pharmacy, just to name some of the common ones that I encounter among the student group. It does not matter, what your academic major is on campus. If you're pursuing a health profession career, you can be part of the pre-health studies program. So this includes students whose major is offered through the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, the Robbins School of Business, and of course, the School of Arts and Sciences. One of the main resources that the program offers is pre-professional advising. I am the primary health professions advisor on campus. I help students plan out their curricular and their extracurricular activities, all with the goal of completing their intended degree program on time and ensuring that they're staying on track to be positioned to be a competitive professional school applicant. When the time comes to apply to professional school, I do help students also navigate that process through various workshops that I lead, as well as one-on-one advising meetings. I address topics such as, how do you complete common applications, writing personal statements, preparing for professional school interviews, choosing which schools to apply to, I can connect current students with alumni of Richmond who are attending various professional schools that are of interest to applicants. In terms of advising for each of the semesters you're at Richmond, you will have an academic advisor that is an assigned advisor. Once you declare a major, you'll get assigned to someone in that department of that major. But I will still be with you at that point. You can think of me as a secondary advisor kind of at all times until you reach your goal of starting professional school. The most immediate help that I can provide is just going to be to give you some guidance regarding this upcoming semester. I know you have a registration period that's not too far off, so I wanted to say a little bit about that. And I have a couple slides dealing with that coming up, but I also want to address what pre-health studies is not. And so I've got on here that it's not an academic major. I mentioned a moment ago that pre-health students can choose any major. As you look over that list of majors that the university has on its website, one that you will not see is pre-health because, again, this program is not an academic major. So you can't declare pre-med, for example, as a major or any other type of pre-health major. Our program is simply a resource only. That said, the pre-health studies program does have a curriculum in a sense because the professional schools that you'll ultimately be applying to later on have specific course requirements for their admission to their programs. And therefore, there are going to be multiple curricular tracks within pre-health studies. You will find these tracks listed on Grad Tracker if you've had a chance yet to explore Grad Tracker. When you create what-if scenarios, it gives you kind of drop-down menus where you can select different majors and such and minors. You will see designations in that drop-down list for various pre-health tracks that you can select, and it will show you exactly which courses at Richmond you should be taking on each of these tracks. The second thing I wanted to mention briefly is that pre-health studies is not the same thing as health studies. And the health studies program, unlike pre-health studies, is an academic program that has an option to be either a major or a minor. Sometimes the health studies program gets confused with pre-health studies, in part because there are a good number of pre-health students who take coursework in that program. But pre-health studies and health studies are actually two separate entities. By the way, I do want to encourage you to consider taking some health studies courses if you're looking at a pre-professional track for the health professions, just because it can be very beneficial to you. They address topics that you often don't learn about in the professional school process, which tends to be very science focused. So the health studies curriculum covers topics that will certainly impact your work as a future health professional. There's an emphasis in that program on healthcare policy, the healthcare delivery system in the US, health economics, public health. The health studies courses are taught by a combination of full-time University of Richmond faculty as well as local professionals who bring their real-world experience into the classroom. For example, if you look at our course listings, you'll find that we have several physicians who teach for us in this program. We have a healthcare attorney who regularly contributes as well, and health ethicist and that sort of thing. So a lot of interesting classes that you encounter there that could supplement the science courses that you're taking on a pre-professional path. Okay, so course registration is, as I mentioned, coming up soon, and you may be wondering what you should take or not take as an incoming pre-health student. So I'll point out a few considerations on this front. First of all, the pre-health tracks all require a good number of science courses. So I highly recommend that you take at least one science course in the upcoming fall semester, regardless of whatever you're thinking about for a particular major. For most students, that course should be our introductory chemistry course, which is Chemistry 141. This is usually the best starting point because the pre-L tracks require more chemistry than biology, and the chemistry courses need to be taken in a particular order. So starting with chemistry is particularly important in terms of the sequencing and timing of things, especially if you're someone who really is interested in studying abroad for a semester at some point. Starting with the chemistry is important because it can affect, like, when you finish the chemistry you need to be able to sit for a test like the MCAT or the dental admission test. Okay. In terms of exceptions to taking Chem 141 in the fall, that would be students who are considering a physics major, in which case they should take our introductory physics course in the fall, or students who have been chosen to participate in the SMART program, in which case they are taking an integrated biology and chemistry course in the fall instead of our traditional 141 course. And then students who have a weak science background or who would just prefer to not begin taking science until the spring to allow an easier adjustment to college academics in their first semester on campus. They would be the ones to think about maybe pushing off that that first chemistry course. If you are considering biology or biochemistry, then you might also consider taking our introductory biology course sequence, which is 199, as you can see. That can be taken along with the Chemistry 141 course. Again, the exceptions are going to be the people who are in the SMART program, who take a different sequence that combines the biology and the chemistry in an integrated format. And then I've also included the exception of persons who might have significant extracurricular commitments. So if you're a varsity athlete, if you're a Bonner scholar, then you have a lot of things going on outside of class that could limit your time for being able to take on a couple science classes from the get-go. In the event that you do plan to take 2 science classes, I would advise you just to be careful about the remaining courses you choose for your schedule, because you don't want to risk overloading yourself your first semester of college. It's easy to do. So just be mindful of that. The first year's a time of adjustment, getting used to living in a new place, more unstructured time and different expectations of college courses, compared to what you're used to from high school. So therefore, I would just recommend being cautious when it comes to that course load. So, an example that I can think of there would be the combination of taking 2 science classes plus calculus in the first semester of college. That would be a very heavy load. And so if you didn't have a really strong science background and math background, it would be probably advisable to not try to do that particular combination. You would still be on track for pre-health without having to take, that kind of heavy combination of classes. Final point I wanted to make regarding courses for the fall semester has to do with AP credit, and this also extends to IB course credits that you may have based on your high school work. I'm guessing that some of you took AP and IB courses and their related exams, and you may be awaiting your scores for some of those. If you visit the New Spiders webpage, you'll see a chart there that shows how the university awards course credit by test score. And that chart will include biology, chemistry, and physics courses. So when you're evaluating this, keep in mind that when you score high enough on a placement test to receive credit, the university is viewing that AP or IB performance as equivalent to the science courses that are indicated on that chart on the webpage. However, that does not mean that a health professional school will take that same view or position, because there will be some out there who will not accept AP or IB credit for the courses they require, even if we award course credit at the university for that. So of the science courses, it's always okay to use AP credit for biology, since that comes in as a non-science course, the way we handle that transfer credit. The same applies to calculus and any of the non-science courses that you may have credit for. It's also generally okay to use credit for physics classes because most health profession schools will accept that credit. There are some exceptions to this, so please reach out to me if you're considering using credit, for physics, and we can dig down into the weeds a little bit more and see, what potential schools might have an issue with that. In contrast to the courses I just mentioned, many of the professional schools do not accept the AP IB credit for general chemistry unless advanced coursework is taken in that area. So because of that, I advise using AP and IB credit for chemistry only in situations where you intend to major or minor in chemistry, or if you're considering the biochemistry, molecular biology major, that one as well would be okay to use AP credits for, just because we know that for those two majors, you'll be taking more advanced chemistry, which could count for the professional schools credits. So those are the main points I wanted to cover regarding the fall semester schedule planning. I realize I went through that course schedule information kind of quickly, but I will be sending out by email on Friday some written guidelines that include the information I just shared with you. And that email will go out to all incoming first-year students who indicated pre-health as an area of interest on their common application to the university. Okay. If you did not make that designation on your common application, or otherwise don't receive, the email from me on Friday, please contact me so that I can add you to my email list and get this information to you. So I've got my email on the slide here. The other way you can find me is just click on the biology department under faculty, and I'll show up there with my contact information. But the primary take-home message for you this evening is that although you hear stories about the pre-health path being challenging, which it is, and it often does have unanticipated twists and turns along the way. I'm here to help you along your journey toward professional school, and I look forward to working with you in the coming semester. So I'm going to stop at this point and field your questions, any of the questions you might have. So if you would, again, you can use that Q&A box to put questions there, and I'll give you a moment to do that just to see if anything shows up.
It seems like you might have answered everyone's questions.
Well, just to reiterate, what I said earlier, I'm here to help. So if you plan to follow a pre-health track, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay, so I do see a question that's popped up here about AP credit. It looks like if you want to test out with AP credit, how does that process work? I believe you have to go to College Board, is it, to their online service where you can have those scores sent to the university. So you would have the AP scores sent to University of Richmond's registrar's office, and then the credit would be applied automatically, I believe. Does that sound correct, Sage?
Yeah, and I'm also trying to look, and I can copy it in a minute for like information from our website too. So if you want to go ahead and answer the next question, I can work to copy that like a link in.
Right. So there's a question about pre-registration for classes and where you can find the recommended courses for the pre-health program. So there are three different places I think you can get this. One would be to go into Grad Tracker and do a what if scenario, and you'll find the different pre-health tracks there. So it'll populate the actual courses for the tracks. You could go to prehealth.richmond.edu to the webpage, and there's a chart there that you can PDF that you can download that has all the pre-health tracks as well as the individual courses for them. And then I'm going to be sending that same chart out in the email that I mentioned on Friday. Let's see. And there's another AP score question related to the Common App that was put down.
I was like, I just sent in that chat a link as well to the registrar's website that has information about
Right.
AP credits because they are far more of an expert than I am. I do think that they're still evaluating AP scores too, if I'm correct. So that might be why you haven't like heard information about that quite yet. But again, I would check out that website for more details that I sent. The registrar's office would be a good resource as well.
I think there's information also on the new spiders.richmond.edu site.
Yeah, there's like links for everything.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Another question that's come in has to do with taking the combination of chemistry, biology, and calculus as being a tough load. SMART. The student indicates they're in SMART and wants advice on the last class to schedule. So SMART is a little bit different because it's an integrated course sequence. So it's not going to be the same as taking a chemistry class, a biology class, and a calculus class, right? That would be 3 units if you did that, whereas doing SMART, you're only getting 1 unit for the bio and chem, and then you're getting another unit for the calculus. So you only get the equivalent of 2 units. So it's not going to be as heavy doing it with SMART as it would be if you did Chem 141, Bio 199, and calculus. The chemistry and the biology are spread out over the course of the year that way. So in terms of the final class, it could be a general education course. You have plenty of those to complete. Probably not one that's going to be reading and writing in heavy. So just because you're already taking the first year seminar, but any other type of gen ed course that you might find that looks interesting. If you're considering, a particular minor or a major and you're not sure about if it's a good fit, you could take a course, in that area. You should be using some of your courses in your first year to explore the curriculum and figure out what you really like and might want to potentially major in. And so that's another option that you have there for that final course if you're doing the SMART sequence. Okay. Let's see. Another question's come in about Com2 classes. Are they worth prioritizing in registration, or is a science class, more important for prioritizing? I would say that as a pre-health student, prioritizing the chemistry class is going to be the way to go with that. Just because if you delay taking that first chemistry class, it's going to shift everything back a semester because you can't double up on chemistry the way that the courses are sequenced. Whereas, with the language courses, you have a little bit more flexibility depending on which language it is. We also offer, summer options for language courses too, whereas we don't offer that for chemistry classes. So I would say to prioritize the science over the language classes. Yes.
If anyone has any other questions, feel free to type them in.
And this is certainly not your only opportunity to ask questions. I'm around in the summer. It's a pretty busy time for me. We do a lot of help with the application process for students who are applying to professional schools. So I check email pretty frequently.
Yeah, and I was going to say also, if people have questions later too, you can also always reach out to the new spiders at richmond.edu address too, and we can also help answer any questions or get you connected to the right people as well. Oh, there's one more question.
Okay, a question about internships. Right, so there are a lot of resources for this. One of the things that I do for students who are in the program is I maintain for those of you who are familiar with Blackboard, I set up basically a course on Blackboard that you have access to throughout your time at the university. It's basically a huge archive of opportunities for pre-health students, various kinds of clinical experiences, some of which are local in Richmond area, some are outside of state or international. So that's a good source of information to keep in touch with when you're a student at Richmond. I also refer a lot of students over to Center for Civic Engagement, which has a lot of opportunities out in the community, some of which are medical related. And then our career services office is really helpful with connecting with internships that maybe they're aware of that alumni are offering. And we have a lot of business partners out in the community too that contact their office and post different kinds of internships and such. In terms of more of the medically related ones, we do have several major hospitals around the university nearby. We have VCU, which is an academic medical center downtown Richmond. A lot of students end up volunteering there, shadowing doctors, that kind of thing there. Lots of private practices around with Richmond alumni who are physicians and other kind of health practitioners. So there are a lot of opportunities for connection with that. I'll say more about those when we do the more formal meeting at the start of the semester. Let's see, there's another question that's come on about EMT training. So yes, the website does mention EMT training. In fact, when we have our meeting in the fall, I will be inviting some of our student EMTs to come and talk to you about that process. Is it better or not to do that as a first-year student? I would say that it varies by student a lot. And it's going to depend on your course load in part because it's fairly intense. You have, I think it meets a couple nights a week for 3 to 4 hours at a time. And then you have some Saturdays as well that it meets for practicals. And it starts fairly early in the semester. It's, I think, around the middle of September or so. So it is going to be pretty quick after you start classes. So you're going to have to kind of quickly gauge if you really have enough time to manage that kind of course. But we do have some first-year students who do it. I can tell you that. I would say more commonly it's going to be a second-year student. But if you've had some kind of medical experience in the past, or maybe your course load isn't quite as heavy in the fall, then it could work. The course that we do is spread out over the academic year, so it starts in September. I think it runs all the way through April. In the spring, it does not meet during break periods, so fall break and winter break doesn't meet. You can, talk more specifically if you like with the student officers in that group about the time commitments and the nitty-gritty of it, but it will be something that is talked about at the orientation meeting in the fall. I do know that they obviously like to recruit younger students into the program because that way, you can be with them longer up through graduation. But you do have to, make sure that it's not going to overload you in terms of the academic part. Let's see, there's another question. How to stay in the loop on meetings, emails, etc. So again, the way that I try to keep track of everyone who's interested is I have a Google form that I'll ask you to complete. And that Google form, the link to it will be in the email that I send out on Friday. So that's why I said if you don't receive an email from me on Friday, then please send an email to me to let me know that you're interested in being a part of the program, and then I can forward you the link to the Google form. So that way you can make sure that you're on my email list for pre-health.
Well, I was gonna, it's like one of those things where
Okay.
another minute in
Pretty
case.
quiet now.
But as we said before, obviously, if you do have further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out on any end, because we will get you an answer no matter what. So I guess I'll just take a moment again to say thank you to all of you who were in attendance tonight, and also to Dr. John Vaughan for sharing his time with us as well. Again, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and enjoys the rest of their summer as well. Thank you so
All right,
much.
look forward to meeting you all in the fall.
Have a good night.
Okay.